Buckle up. You're going undercover with private investigator Bobby Young. Crossing the crime scene tape into the criminal underworld. This is Evidence Uncovered.
Tennessee Governor Bill Lee exonerated a Grundy County man who was wrongly convicted of murder. To be exonerated is a finding by the governor that an applicant did not commit the crime for which he was convicted. Adam Braseel's name is officially cleared. Our Karen Aguilar spoke with the Braseel and the judge who was on the bench when he walked free. Karen.
Greg, Braseel tells me he had just gotten married before his arrest in 2006. And that was before he was wrongfully imprisoned. He lost his wife and his freedom, but he never gave up hope that he would be proven innocent.
So this is the Adam Braseel case. This was 2018. The year that Covert Results was founded. This was very early on. And the case was brought to us by Nashville attorney Alex Little and Zach Lawson. And Alex and I had some, a working relationship when he was an assistant U.S. attorney with the Middle District. And I was working all of my drug cases with the Drug Task Force. So these attorneys rely on private investigators, and as we're going to go on and talk about this case that has been highly visible in the media, there's probably been 30 to 40 podcasts about this case, but I promise you none of them are the real story. Like, how did they get the facts? How did they uncover the evidence? And what ultimately led to this man's freedom. So, one of the main things that struck me in the very beginning about this case is that Adam, male white, red hair. So, I kind of put myself in his shoes thinking, well, if I grew up in this Grundy County area, I also would have been a suspect of Malcolm Burroughs' murder. And if I drove a gold car at the time, well, who knows? I could be there too. So I'm thankful I did not grow up in Grundy County for that reason. And, in this, we're going to talk about all the things that we saw from an investigator standpoint, what the police did, what they didn't do. And, we're not here to Monday morning quarterback, but we kind of are, because at the end of the day, we're just trying to figure out the truth and what happened. And it's cases like these that are just once in a lifetime where we were able to work them A to Z, and we had an amazing outcome that I would say everybody was happy, maybe except for that assistant DA, because he had it out for Adam. So what do you remember, Janine, from the very beginning?
To be perfectly honest, I remember when we first went down and we met with the attorney, and it's one of those things where you always hear, well, I didn't do it. I'm innocent, and you kind of got to go with that. And obviously, sometimes the attorney is just doing it to make the money. And then other times it's like, he really believes. And I think even sitting through just getting the details and talking about, the general discovery that he had and things that had already been done, I think I felt like, yeah, okay, well, maybe, because the description was there, the car was there. So you're kind of like, okay, how do you have a trial? And if these things, the woman ID'd him. I mean, the
Right.
woman, that was assaulted. So you kind of go, well, believe me, doing ID witness in my years of experience say, no, you can't always go with that, because in the heat of the moment and trying to pick somebody, and as it ends up in this case, I think he was prominently selected because, as you say, male white, red hair, goatee, those he met all
Ball
those
cap. Who doesn't wear a ball cap these days?
Right. And so I think I questioned whether or not we were really going to be able to do something. At this point, he had been in jail, 11, 12? And I think ultimately he ended up staying 12 years.
Correct.
So, he had already been there. And I think at one point, I remember him saying that he's had several other attorneys and they have tried appeals over and over again. And you kind of go, how many times, is there anything we're going to be able to find that hasn't already been brought up? So.
Yeah, and there was some major turns in this case, evidentiary wise, and we'll get to that. We won't spoil it right here in the beginning, the first 5 minutes. But of course, Adam was interviewed at the time of the murder. I think it was in January 2006, and the facts of the case were that the victim, Malcolm Burrows, was a known pill dealer in the area, and that he was helping somebody at a car. And, all these details are just, not only are they old, but you never really had a solid witness. It was definitely dark. I believe there was some inclement weather, but ultimately Malcolm was bludgeoned to death. He had, I think, a tire iron hit him in the head, and then I think the autopsy said something about a fractured skull. So I mean, he was definitely beaten to death. And you think first, okay, well, if this guy potentially is a drug dealer, I mean, that's what the whole town was saying. And there's been probably hundreds of media stories, and then, like I said, podcasts. I think there was supposed to be a movie coming out on this case. I don't know. We're not part of any movie. Are you a part of any movie? I haven't signed anything. You haven't signed anything. I'm not going to be starring in any big movie coming up. But again, like all of these stories that have been put forth in the media, none of them contain the information that we're about to tell you. And these are the facts. This is what happened. This is from the PI's perspective. This is evidence uncovered. And, I'll just say it. Like, you search on the internet and you can find my name. It's in one article. I had it pulled up right here. It's called the Grundy County Herald, and it mentions me testifying in court. And I don't think your name appears anywhere, but your picture does, that we will show everybody.
Oh, it's a terrible picture.
Your picture does appear. So we were there. In fact, we were there. But back to the facts, when Adam was arrested in 2006, he was interviewed and said that he had a cut on his face, and he had told the police that a box had fallen at work. Well, everybody knew he had worked at UPS. That was a credible source. It was verified. Mm-hmm. And of course, well, if you work around UPS, of course there's boxes. But it just kind of seemed like, from an investigator's perspective, if you're looking at it and you're just kind of reading the notes and you're like, okay, sure, a box fell and hit you in the face. So you just have to, as a private investigator, if you have the prior law enforcement experience, you almost have to take that information that's in your head and throw it away. Because when you're in law enforcement, you are likely to believe the first person that comes forward, first off. And second off, if someone claims they're a victim, then you have to work the case, but you just automatically believe them. And I mean, I can't tell you how many cases that I worked on the drug side where we're using a confidential informant and their rap sheet is this long. How the hell is somebody credible, that's been arrested 400 times? But we're utilizing them as a confidential informant, getting information and arresting other people. And it's probably why many of them didn't go to trial. But, I think that's in most crimes, is that you may have somebody that has a sketchy past, sketchy witness, and they're just not trustworthy. But someone comes forward, someone makes a statement. Like in this case, there's identification, I guess a 6-pack, but in this case, it was an 8-pack.
Yes.
You remember that?
I had never
seen. How does that work out?
I don't know, but they have that in the article also.
How did it work for you? I mean, you were in policing 32 years at Metro. Was there ever an 8-pack?
Never an 8-pack. And why a couple of them? We always did a 6-pack, but not only that.
And that's 6 pictures, right? 6
Yes.
photos, and
On a single sheet. You know, you look at the, you know, the characteristics and everything. You know, you kind of talk to the person and you say, you know, I want you to just take a minute and, you know, think about their features, think about anything that stood out to you, you know, when you had it. Obviously, normally the 6 pictures are somewhat similar. And so, you know.
yeah, you can't have, if your suspect's a male white, you can't put male black and male Asian and male Hispanic all in there.
No.
That is police 101. You don't do that. That's written in the rules somewhere.
Right. And in this case, it had already been, you know, stated and put out that it was a male white with red hair, facial hair. So
driving a gold car.
Yes. And so that they had all of that information, and yet still, I will find that 8-pack, as you call it, and we'll let everybody take a look at that and say,
yeah, you decide for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it came down to possibly, to me, if with that description, there would have only been 2 that were in this of the 8. And obviously the one that ended up, we found out that actually did it wasn't on that sheet at all. So if you're looking to match that description that you have, then you were going to pick wrong irregardless, you know.
Yeah, and if people don't have criminal history and they don't have a mugshot, what do you have to do then?
Then you have to go to their driver's license.
Have to use their driver's license.
State issued ID. So
yeah, so sometimes that can muddy the waters a bit, and you should be utilizing a picture that you know for a fact that person cannot be a suspect. So either A, they could be incarcerated at the time of the crime, so there's no way they could commit it, or they're deceased, or some other factor where they know that, okay, if a witness or a victim, well, in this case, victim's dead, points this person out, there's no way they could have been there. So, but I vaguely remember in this case, if I remember it correctly, one of the witnesses, or it was Malcolm's mother, who I believe was also hit in the head in the home, which all of this, it really doesn't make a lot of sense in the first place. Like the way, you know, the mother's hitting the head while somebody's bending down under a sink, and then somebody comes out of a room and like wrestles and a fire extinguisher's thrown, and then later they find the guy dead next to the car. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense. But what I remember is one of those witnesses going into the police station, and they had pictures out on a table, which again, easy to Monday morning quarterback, but you're not supposed to let the witness come in and you have a bunch of pictures laid out, and then they point to one and say, that's him right there. And who knows, that could have been the one on the top, or, you know, the one that was closest to them, and they just saw the first redheaded person. And I believe that Adam was picked out, not necessarily out of the lineup originally, but his photograph was identified. And then they said, well, hang on, we got to do this the right way.
Yeah.
Let's put together a lineup. And yeah, well, I've always seen a 6-pack or 6 various pictures, but this one had 8. And of course, they then just picked the same picture that they just saw. So that was kind of like a big defining moment that, oh, that's it. Adam's guilty. You know, he's a redhead. He's young. He's white male. He was in the area. His mother had a gold car. So that's it. Case closed. He's guilty. Go to jail for life.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, there were also rumors about the sheriff, the Brent Myers that was there, that he had issues with.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what was going on at that time, but believe a sheriff, maybe it was him, got arrested at some point. So yeah, I
Right.
think there
He-
was,
he did.
I think there was some things going on. And what was crazy to me about this case is, we both worked at Metro Nashville Police, and you feel like, as far as the police side, we put together good, if not really, really good, really solid investigations. And what I was so shocked and then told a lot of people is, well, one, I got to drive to Grundy County. It takes a little while up in the hills on the mountain. I was shocked at their lack of investigative skills, and the things that they did not have resources, they did not have training, they did not have the know-all of how to do all these things correctly. And it really played a huge role in this case overall that sent this man to jail for a long time, because sometimes police of all types of people, I mean, guilty here included, think they know everything. And sometimes you don't want to admit that you don't really exactly know what you're doing and ask for help. But like in this case, it was just case closed so quickly. And working in Nashville, versus Grundy County, it was so different. Like the overall investigation was terrible.
Well, along with that, no, we're talking small town. Everybody knows everybody. And even though Adam grew up there, it was not actually right in. He was kind of in the outskirts.
Right.
Where
Yeah,
he grew up.
Mhm.
I can't remember the name of the
Yeah,
little
this was
town.
Tracy City. Yeah,
yeah.
that's where the murder occurred, in Tracy City.
And then he actually lived a little bit outside of that. And so even though, he had been there, never had any kind of problems with anything. And actually, if I remember right, he had come home or come to his mom's house for the weekend. And then he went hunting, kind of.
Yeah, I think he was riding four-wheelers.
Right, four-wheelers and stuff
as a thing for these young kids to do.
Yeah. And so they had been up in the woods.
Yeah.
The unbeknownst to, anything that had even happened. And I think at the time he was like 22 years old. If you've never been in any kind of trouble, and you're just out in the woods, I mean, I'm sure he was completely taken by surprise when his name, or his photo in this case, got put in there. So it was.
Yeah, like I said, there's so much media coverage and there's so many pictures, and I mean, there's definitely one picture that we'll put on the screen. You can see a very young Adam, and the look on his face. I believe the look on his face is one of the times that either was when he was found guilty originally at trial of the murder, or later when he was denied an appeal. But you could just see the shock on his face, like, what is going on? Like, why am I even here? And, that's what I was saying in the beginning is, we enjoy cases like this because everybody wins. I mean, everybody wins because you take a look at these types of cases where somebody gets convicted of murder and then 20 years later they're exonerated. And who does that look bad on? That looks bad on, here, let me get a list here, the police. It looks bad on the district attorney's office for prosecuting them. And then most district attorney's offices have their own investigators, so DA investigators. Looks bad on the defense attorney. Most defense attorneys will hire private investigators. That looks bad on those defense attorneys, those private investigators. It looks bad on the jury. So it looks bad on the entire system, like the whole justice system. I'm here to tell you today, it is broken. It is absolutely broken. And I'm not saying I'm going to fix it, but it's jacked up. It's very jacked up. So, talk about he's riding in the hills, and this happened in 2006. We got called in 2018.
Right.
And then we knew that if we could uncover some evidence, that there would be a hearing in 2019.
Right.
I think it was in the summer of 2019 that there was a hearing.
Yeah.
And we took this case on, I think, late 2018, and we were not given a whole lot of information. Some of these cases, sometimes we call them post-conviction relief, like PCR. This one was a little bit different, but we looked at it the same thing. And we've worked some of those other types of cases where the lawyers will give us banker boxes of discovery. And, we look at it and we're like, this does not look very fun. And we don't want to go through all that. But, sometimes that is what is needed. And I would say in this case, we did not get that. We were told, look, there's another private investigator, David, and we talked to him, good guy, and he had a lot of information. And I believe he was working on some sort of media thing or movie, and he had all the backstory working up to the murder itself, and then followed the case through. And I'm certain he's done plenty of interviews on this story, this tragic. The man died, and then this man went to jail for 12 years. And we're going to tell you who actually did it. We're sitting there in late 2018 trying to come up with a game plan. I mean, we got to come up with a game plan and figure out, just like we told you in the last episode with Letitia Lane and the missing person. I mean, we take it just like any other case. You sit down, you look at the notes, you look at the evidence. It's there. And if it's not there, then we have to create it, drum it up, figure out how do we go get this. And I remember one of the, I would say, tall tasks in the very beginning the attorneys gave us was, well, there's this guy named Kermit Bryson, and he was a cop killer, right? Shot a cop, and then he killed himself.
He did. Yeah.
So he was dead, and he had this girlfriend that he was around during this time, and they said, well, just, go talk to her. And you and I both know it's not that easy to just go interview somebody. But I think we did accomplish that in a way. Do you remember?
Well, I remember talking to a lot of people before we actually got to her, though. I mean, obviously, you look back, I mean, we had a full page of people to interview. And I think, we made several trips down there to, talk to all the different people, see what they had to say. Those that we couldn't, a lot of times it's so much easier if you can meet somebody in person. They get to look at you, understand what you're trying to do and everything. And don't get me wrong, Adam had a lot of support. His sisters and his mom, they were doing everything they could, spending every dime they had in order to try to, get his name out. If anybody saw anything, if anybody heard anything. And I mean, now we're talking 12 years later. So the people that did probably have information have moved, died, all of that kind of stuff. And I mean, even, the lady that was assaulted, she ended up passing away. She had already passed when we got the case. So going back to ask her and to talk to her about it, we weren't able to even do that. So a lot of the information that we did have that we, generally speaking, it was gone. It was old. People weren't there anymore. I remember calling people and saying, hey, my name is Janine Hale and I'm with Covert Results, and we're actually looking into the Adam Braseel case. And they'd either just hang up on you or give you some select information, some nice little, I have nothing to say. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, because back then, I think there was a feeling that the sheriff and other people, especially the victim that was killed, that, with him being a pill dealer, and there was information about he was in cahoots with the doctor that was down there. And
It was like something to do with Arabian horses or something.
Yes,
and these are things that
the doctor's horses got killed when she didn't want to do business with him anymore. So I think a lot of people were afraid and just did not want to be involved. And, at that time, like I say, even though he was from the area, Adam wasn't, one of the boys. He was the scapegoat that just happened to be there, home for the weekend from college, and, boom, he just fit the bill, and it made it really easy, to just
pin it on him,
push him right in and tag him with it. So
yeah, we were given the task to go interview some people, like you said, and we had a long list, but we started figuring out that some of these people were deceased, which is very weird because we've had a lot of cases like this, but time passed, and the murder occurred in 2006, and it's now 2018, so we're already 12 years in. So much evidence has been lost at this point. But when we went to a Mexican restaurant, we had information from some of the people that we were talking to, and Adam's sister, Christina, was amazing in the whole process. Like you said, it was positive and uplifting to see that family members and friends were so supportive, but Christina was definitely a driving force, in my opinion, behind that whole thing. And we were told, hey, look, if you want to interview Kermit's old girlfriend at the time that all of this was happening, then her and her daughter work at a Mexican restaurant. Well, I am no stranger of Mexican restaurants because I like
favorite food.
Yes. I like a good margarita. And we went up there and sat down not knowing what to expect. It was a very small Mexican restaurant. I'm not even sure of the name at this point. But it was one of those joints that probably the people that work there know who comes in.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure we were probably pointed out in the get-go, but you and another investigator, I remember sat in a booth, and I sat at the bar because I believe the daughter was at the bar on that day. And I don't remember if she was 17 or 18, but there's rules about interviewing juveniles and things like that. So there wasn't a whole lot of statements that I was able to get from the daughter. Basically, just some small talk to start off. I mean, I ordered a margarita, and I was just talking to the daughter, and then it just happened to come up, and then she had mentioned like her mom's first name, and then I said, "Oh, is she working today?" And she said, "Yeah, she's in the back." So I said, well, I'm actually from Nashville. You probably figured I'm not from around here, but might have a little bit of a country slang going on. But so the mother comes out, and as we do a recorded conversation. Thank you. Do y'all have any lunch specials or anything?
We do. Right here's our lunch menu.
Let me ask you a question. Do you know where Winston Avenue is? Is that around here?
Yes. Okay. Do you know where the Mountain Goat is?
No, I'm not. I'm actually from Nashville.
Okay.
So.
Do you know where anything in town is?
No, I was told to come here. I was looking for Tina.
Okay.
So I was wanting to.
She just left. It was the blonde-headed lady.
Oh.
She'll be back in just a few minutes.
Okay. Not that any questions are like incriminating or anything. You know what I mean? It's just.
And like I said,
in a way, you're very close to the case, but then in another sense, you're really not.
And that's what everybody's like, you have to know something. You lived with it. Okay.
But I mean, if Kermit, I mean, was he known to regularly hang out with Malcolm?
No.
So,
You didn't know him that I know of. That was one of the questions they asked me. Did you guys hang out with Malcolm? I'm like, no. And the night, that's what they were asking, the night that that was supposed to happen was the weekend of my birthday. So all my family was in town. I told Mom I remember, because I remember going to church the next morning and them saying that he'd been murdered that night.
Do you remember what Kermit said about it? Or did he just didn't say anything? Or you don't remember?
No, I mean, as far as, we were just talking about how, from Monty go to church and close that, at the time we lived during the housing projects.
Oh, okay.
That's what we were talking about. You know, it's that close to home. You don't think, you know, you don't want murders to happen that close to home.
When people are victims of crimes, they're relying on police. Police are so busy, they'll reach out to private investigators like Covert Results, and we will take that and we will work it A to Z as if we are still police, and we are happy to present that in a court of law if we get that evidence. So feel free to rely on us if you feel your case is not being worked appropriately. You can contact Covert Results. Head to our website, covertresults.com. Give us a call, shoot us an email, and we'll be certain to help you out. You know, there really wasn't a whole lot of details. I could tell, and I'm not just saying this, that there's definitely some information that was not being told, definitely being withheld. And, you know, I could tell that I was not getting the truth.
Right.
And then that's easy to say because of the situation, what we were doing and what we were trying to accomplish. But there's such easy questions that I would ask where I already knew the answer, but I wasn't getting the same answer. So, I mean, that's, you know, police interrogation 101 as well, is, you know, you ask them something you already know the answer to and you gauge whether they're lying or not. So, you know, that was a little disappointing. Like, we accomplished the mission, but we didn't have like an aha moment. And if you remember, one of the biggest aha moments that we also learned at this time when we were doing this investigation was a fingerprint.